Everyone remembers the Mustang tearing through San Francisco, the engine roar, the sharp turns, the moment Bullitt became more than just a cop thriller. But here's what most fans never question. That legendary chase almost didn't exist at all. Behind the cool surface of this classic lies a production shaped by creative clashes, studio confrontations, and risks that could have destroyed the entire project. What audiences experience as effortless cool was fought for at every stage. So before you assume there's nothing left to discover about Bullitt, consider this. The very scene that defined the film was never part of the original plan. Number 1. The chase that wasn't there. Few fans realize that the most celebrated car chase in cinema history was never part of the original screenplay. Alan Trustman's script, adapted from Robert L. Pike's novel Mute Witness, focused on political tension and procedural detective work. There was no high-speed pursuit through city streets. The chase only began to take shape during development, and how it got there remains a point of disagreement. Director Peter Yates and Steve McQueen both later claimed significant credit for pushing the idea forward. Trustman maintained that the framework existed in his writing, while Yates argued that the sequence grew from a desire to show San Francisco in motion. McQueen, already passionate about racing in his personal life, saw it as a way to ground the film in physical reality rather than staged Hollywood action. What makes this dispute so important is that neither side fully controlled the outcome. The chase evolved through collaboration, compromise, and instinct, none of which followed a clear plan. It reshaped the entire film's identity, turning a political thriller into something audiences had never experienced before. The fact that this defining sequence emerged from creative friction rather than a single vision only adds to its legend. Number 2. McQueen vs. Warner Brothers. A battle fought far from the camera nearly changed everything about this film. Warner Brothers executives were uncomfortable with the idea of shooting a major studio production on real San Francisco streets. The logistics were unpredictable, the costs harder to control, and the risks far greater than anything a soundstage would present. Studio leadership pushed to bring production back to Los Angeles, where sets could be built and managed. McQueen refused. Through his production company, Solar Productions, he had enough leverage to resist the studio's pressure, but not without friction. He saw location shooting as essential to the film's credibility. A fabricated version of San Francisco built on a backlot would strip away the texture and honesty he wanted. For McQueen, this wasn't a stylistic preference. It was a creative requirement he was willing to stake his reputation on. The standoff ended with McQueen getting his way, though it came at a cost in studio goodwill. Warner Brothers reluctantly allowed the production to remain in San Francisco, a decision that would define the movie's visual identity. Every real street corner, every authentic backdrop audiences see in the finished film exists because one actor chose a fight most would have avoided. Number 3. The car choice was pure politics. Behind the iconic pairing of Mustang and Charger lies a story driven less by cinematic instinct and more by corporate obligation. Ford had a promotional agreement with the production, which meant the hero car was always going to carry their badge. The 1968 Mustang GT 390 Fastback was selected as Frank Bullitt's vehicle, fitting both the brand deal and the character's understated style. The original plan reportedly called for a second Ford vehicle to serve as the villain's car, but that arrangement fell apart. Whether it was a matter of visual contrast, availability, or shifting negotiations, the production turned to the 1968 Dodge Charger 440 instead. It was a practical solution. The Charger was powerful, visually aggressive, and immediately distinct from the Mustang on screen. What no one anticipated was how perfectly the Charger would function as a screen antagonist. Its blacked-out grille and muscular frame gave it a predatory quality that no planned Ford pairing could have matched. A decision born from logistics and brand politics ended up creating one of the most recognizable vehicle rivalries in film history, entirely by accident. Number 4. San Francisco opened everything. Filming in a major city is never simple, but the production secured a level of access that was nearly unheard of for the era. San Francisco city officials agreed to open real locations, police stations, hospitals, neighborhoods, for extended shooting schedules. This wasn't a handful of quick exterior shots dressed up with set design. The crew embedded itself in the city's infrastructure. The negotiations reportedly involved assurances that the film would portray San Francisco respectfully and prominently. City leaders understood the promotional value of a major Hollywood production, showcasing their streets, and in return, they offered cooperation that went beyond standard permits. Entire blocks were cleared for filming, and local officials helped coordinate traffic control for key sequences. The result transformed the movie into something inseparable from its setting. San Francisco wasn't just a backdrop, it became a character with weight and personality. The fog, the steep grades, the lived-in feel of real neighborhoods gave the film an authenticity that no constructed set could replicate. Audiences didn't just watch a story unfold in a city, they felt the city itself shaping every scene. Number 5. Cameras meant to be destroyed. Capturing speed at street level required the kind of risk that most productions would never authorize. The crew used lightweight Aeroflex cameras, mounting them directly onto the cars, and low-riding rigs designed to stay inches from the pavement. These setups placed expensive equipment in positions where a single miscalculation could obliterate them instantly. Several cameras were damaged during production, and the team accepted this as an unavoidable cost of the approach. Traditional camera placements, shooting from a safe distance or using telephoto lenses, would have produced a detached, observational feel. Director Peter Yates wanted the opposite. He needed the audience to feel locked inside the chase, surrounded by velocity and danger, not watching it from the sidewalk. The gamble paid off in ways that still hold up decades later. The footage captured from these vulnerable positions gave the chase a visceral, ground-level intensity that separated it from every pursuit filmed before it. Audiences weren't just seeing cars move fast, they were experiencing the weight, vibration, and chaos of real speed. That immersion came at a price, but the results redefined what a camera could do inside an action sequence. Number 6. Bullitt was a modern Western. Long before cameras rolled, McQueen had a clear vision for how Frank Bullitt should carry himself, and it had nothing to do with traditional cop movies. He saw the character as a frontier lawman transplanted into a modern city, someone who operated by instinct and personal code rather than procedure. This Western sensibility became the foundation for every choice McQueen made on screen, from how he spoke to how he moved through a room. That philosophy extended far beyond attitude. Wardrobe decisions reflected it. The understated turtleneck, the simple leather holster, the lack of flashy accessories. McQueen's posture and movement were deliberately restrained, echoing the quiet authority of classic Western heroes rather than the frantic energy audiences expected from urban crime films. Every gesture was stripped down to its essentials, leaving only what was necessary. The result gave the film a tone that felt entirely different from its genre peers. Where other late 1960s thrillers leaned into gritty realism or stylized violence, this movie carried a calm, almost meditative quality. Bullitt didn't chase chaos, he waited for it to come to him. That patience, borrowed directly from the Western tradition, gave the character a weight and gravity that no amount of dialogue could have achieved. It was a performance built on silence and control. Number 7. Why the Golden Gate is missing. One of San Francisco's most recognizable landmarks is completely absent from the film's famous chase, and that wasn't the original plan. Early discussions included the possibility of staging part of the pursuit across the Golden Gate Bridge, a location that would have given the sequence an instantly iconic backdrop. On paper, it seemed like a natural fit for a high-speed chase set in the city, and the production was eager to make it work. Permission was denied. Bridge authorities were unwilling to allow the kind of dangerous, high-speed filming the production required. Closing lanes, managing safety risks, and dealing with potential damage to the structure made the proposal entirely impractical. The filmmakers had to abandon the idea and rethink where the chase would unfold, turning instead to the city's residential streets. That rejection turned out to be a gift. Without the bridge, the pursuit was rerouted through San Francisco's steep residential hills, the sharp drops, blind crests, and narrow streets that gave the sequence its unmistakable character. A flat, wide bridge would have produced speed, but not danger. The hills delivered both, along with a sense of unpredictability that no landmark could match. What began as a frustrating limitation became the chase's greatest visual strength. Number 8. The man inside the Charger. Behind the wheel of the black Charger was a driver whose performance was just as critical as anything happening in front of the camera. Bill Hickman, a veteran stunt driver with years of Hollywood experience, was responsible for making the villain's car feel alive, aggressive, relentless, and dangerously unpredictable. His driving wasn't just fast, it was deliberately menacing, designed to put pressure on every shot. Hickman had built a reputation as one of the industry's most reliable and fearless drivers. He understood that effective stunt driving wasn't about recklessness, it was about precision at extreme speed. Every swerve, every near miss, every aggressive lane change was calculated to look chaotic while remaining controlled enough to protect the crew and vehicles around him. That balance between danger and discipline defined his entire approach. His contribution to the film is often overlooked because he's never seen clearly on screen during the chase. Yet the Charger's personality, its predatory presence in the rearview mirror, its refusal to fall back, came directly from Hickman's instincts behind the wheel. He also played one of the hitmen in the film, giving him a rare double role as both actor and stunt performer. Without his skill and commitment, the chase would have lost half its tension. Number 9. One Mustang wasn't enough. Pulling off a chase of this scale with a single vehicle was never realistic. The production used two 1968 Ford Mustang GT fastbacks, each assigned a distinct role throughout filming. One served as the hero car, the vehicle used for close-ups, dialogue scenes, and any shot where the car needed to look pristine and undamaged. The second was the stunt car, built to absorb punishment during the most physically demanding sequences. The stunt Mustang was reinforced with heavier suspension components and modified to handle the brutal impacts of San Francisco's steep hills. Its engine was tuned for raw performance rather than appearance. Meanwhile, the hero car remained largely stock, preserving the clean, understated look that matched Frank Bullitt's character. Keeping both vehicles visually identical on camera required constant attention and maintenance from the crew. Editing played a crucial role in maintaining the illusion. Cuts were timed to disguise transitions between the two cars, ensuring audiences never noticed the switch. Small differences, a scratch here, a slightly different exhaust note there, were carefully managed or hidden through camera angles and tight framing. The seamless result on screen concealed a logistical juggling act that ran throughout the entire production. Number 10. The engine sound was engineered. What audiences hear during the chase feels raw and unfiltered, but that sensation was carefully manufactured in post-production. The roaring engines, tire squeals, and exhaust blasts that define the sequence were not simply recorded live on set during filming. They were the product of a layered post-production process designed to amplify every moment of speed and power beyond what natural sound alone could deliver. Real engine recordings formed the foundation. Sound engineers captured actual Mustang and Charger engines under various conditions: acceleration, deceleration, idle, and redline. But those raw recordings alone lacked the visceral intensity the filmmakers wanted. Additional layers were recorded separately, sometimes using different vehicles or isolated engine components, then blended into the mix to create a fuller, more aggressive sonic profile that matched the visual impact. The final audio track was a hybrid of reality and engineering. Every gear shift, every throttle surge was timed and mixed to match the visual rhythm of the chase. Audiences assumed they were hearing exactly what happened on those San Francisco streets, but what they experienced was a carefully sculpted version of it, one designed to make speed feel not just visible, but physical. That deliberate construction is a major reason the sequence still sounds powerful decades later. Number 11. McQueen lost control once. Even the most carefully managed production can't eliminate every risk when real speed is involved. During one of the chase sequences, McQueen pushed the Mustang harder than planned and momentarily lost control of the vehicle. The car veered off its intended path, startling the crew and the stunt team who were coordinating the shot from nearby positions. For a brief moment, the line between filmmaking and genuine danger disappeared entirely. The incident alarmed the stunt coordinators, who had already expressed concern about how much driving McQueen was doing personally. While his skill behind the wheel was never in question, he was an experienced racer in his private life. The demands of filming were different from a controlled track environment. City streets offered no runoff areas, no safety barriers, and no second chances if something went wrong at high speed. After the incident, the production quietly reassessed which shots McQueen would handle himself and which would be turned over to professional stunt drivers. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation, but rather a practical acknowledgement that protecting the film's lead actor had to take priority over authenticity. The moment served as a sobering reminder that every second of the chase carried real physical consequences, no matter how effortless the final footage appeared on screen. Number 12. A crash they didn't plan. Not every moment of controlled chaos stayed controlled. During one high-speed pass through a San Francisco intersection, an unscripted collision occurred that no one on the production had anticipated. The impact was real, metal against metal at speed. And for a moment, the crew wasn't sure whether anyone had been injured or whether the shot was salvageable. It was exactly the kind of accident the stunt team had worked to prevent. Once it was clear that no one was seriously hurt, the filmmakers reviewed the footage and faced a choice. They could discard the shot and attempt to restage it under more controlled conditions, or they could use the raw, unplanned moment exactly as it happened. The collision had a quality that no amount of choreography could replicate. A sudden jolt of real-world unpredictability breaking through the surface of a carefully staged sequence. They kept it. The unscripted crash made it into the final cut, and most audiences have no idea they're watching something the filmmakers never intended. It blends seamlessly into the rhythm of the chase, adding a layer of authenticity that feels deliberate even though it was anything but. That willingness to embrace the unexpected rather than discard it speaks to the production's instinct for recognizing when reality outperforms design. Number 13. Editing won an Oscar. What happens in the editing room rarely gets the recognition it deserves, but this film became a rare exception. Frank P. Keller won the Academy Award for Best Film Editing at the 1969 ceremony, and the chase sequence was the centerpiece of that achievement. His work transformed hours of raw footage, shot across multiple days and locations, into a seamless, rhythmically precise sequence that still serves as a masterclass in pacing. Keller's approach was defined by restraint as much as intensity. He understood that a great chase isn't built by showing everything at maximum speed. Instead, he varied the rhythm, holding certain shots longer than expected, then cutting rapidly during moments of peak danger. This push and pull created a sense of escalation that kept audiences locked in without overwhelming them. The quiet moments between bursts of action made each acceleration feel more powerful by contrast. The award recognized not just technical skill but editorial vision. Keller competed against some of the year's most prominent films, and the fact that his work stood out reflects how essential editing was to the movie's identity. Without his decisions about what to include, what to cut, and how to pace each moment, the chase footage would have remained impressive but unstructured. He gave it a heartbeat, and that heartbeat is what audiences still respond to decades later. Number 14. The Mustang that vanished. After production wrapped, the two Mustangs used during filming went their separate ways, and one of them disappeared almost entirely. The stunt car, heavily worn from the demands of the chase, was reportedly sold and eventually scrapped. But the hero car, the one featured in close-ups and quieter scenes, simply vanished from public view. For decades, its whereabouts remained one of Hollywood's most enduring automotive mysteries. Rumors circulated for years. Some claimed McQueen himself had tried to buy the car back and was refused. Others suggested it had been quietly stored in a private collection, hidden from the public eye. The truth remained elusive, and the mystery only deepened the car's legendary status. It wasn't just a movie prop anymore. It had become a piece of cultural history that no one could account for. The car was eventually traced to a family that had owned it for years, largely unaware of the intense interest surrounding it. When its existence was finally confirmed and the vehicle resurfaced publicly, it generated enormous attention from collectors, historians, and fans of the film alike. The Mustang's long disappearance and quiet rediscovery added an unexpected final chapter to the movie's story, one that played out not on screen but across decades of real life. Number 15. McQueen closed his eyes. One of the film's most revealing moments has nothing to do with the famous chase. During a quieter driving scene, Jacqueline Bisset's character takes the wheel while McQueen sits in the passenger seat. What makes the scene remarkable isn't the dialogue or the destination. It's McQueen's visible discomfort as Bisset navigates through San Francisco traffic. The man famous for his love of speed looked genuinely uneasy letting someone else drive. Bisset was actually behind the wheel for the take, and McQueen's reaction appears to be entirely authentic rather than performed. At certain points during the scene, he reportedly closed his eyes and tensed up, unable to fully trust the situation despite being surrounded by a professional crew. For someone who prided himself on control, both on screen and behind the wheel, surrendering that control clearly didn't come naturally, even in a low-speed setting. The moment is a rare crack in the McQueen persona. Throughout the film, Frank Bullitt is composed, unshakable, and always in command. But this brief scene reveals something more human beneath the surface, a man whose confidence was tied directly to being the one in the driver's seat. It's a small, easy-to-miss detail, but for anyone paying close attention, it exposes a vulnerability that makes both the actor and the character far more interesting. Number 16. No tricks, no speed cheats. At a time when most Hollywood productions relied on undercranking cameras or editing tricks to create the illusion of speed, this film took a radically different approach. The filmmakers insisted on capturing real velocity, no slowed-down playback, no artificial acceleration in post-production. Every frame of the chase was shot at standard speed, meaning what audiences saw on screen was an honest representation of how fast those cars were actually moving through city streets. That commitment came with serious consequences. Shooting at genuine high speeds through San Francisco's hills meant every take carried real danger. There were no safety nets built into the photography. If a car looked like it was traveling at 100 miles per hour, it was because the vehicle was actually approaching that speed. The camera operators, stunt drivers, and crew members on the ground all understood that the margin for error was dangerously thin with every pass. The decision gave the chase a physical weight that audiences could feel instinctively, even if they couldn't articulate why. Artificially enhanced speed tends to create a slightly detached, almost cartoonish quality that the human eye recognizes subconsciously. By refusing to cheat, the filmmakers preserved a sense of gravity and real-world consequence that separated this sequence from virtually everything else being produced at the time. It's a major reason the chase still feels grounded and visceral even when compared to modern action filmmaking. Number 17. The chase saved the movie. Not everyone involved in the production was confident the film would work as a complete narrative. During filming and into post-production, concerns grew that the story's slow pacing and minimal dialogue might leave audiences feeling disconnected. The plot, a complex web of political maneuvering and witness protection, demanded patience, and some worried that patience was something mainstream audiences wouldn't offer a crime thriller in the late 1960s. The chase sequence changed that equation entirely. Once the pursuit was assembled in the editing room, it became clear that the film had a centerpiece powerful enough to carry everything around it. The deliberate, quiet buildup that preceded the chase suddenly felt purposeful rather than sluggish. Every restrained scene, every moment of silence, now served as tension accumulating toward an explosive release that audiences weren't prepared for. It became a rare case where a single sequence defined an entire film's reputation and commercial success. Critics who had mixed feelings about the narrative universally praised the chase as groundbreaking. Audiences who might have dismissed the movie's slower rhythms left theaters talking about nothing else. The chase didn't just save the film from potential mediocrity, it elevated it into a cultural landmark that transcended its genre and its era. Number 18. Bullitt copied a real detective. The character audiences see on screen wasn't built entirely from imagination. Before filming began, McQueen sought out a real San Francisco homicide inspector named Dave Toschi to study how an actual detective carried himself on the job. Toschi was well known in the department, a sharp, respected investigator whose reputation would later grow even further when he became a central figure in one of the city's most notorious unsolved cases during the years that followed. McQueen spent time observing Toschi's habits, mannerisms, and daily routines in the field. He noted how the detective wore his shoulder holster, how he interacted with colleagues, and how he carried authority without raising his voice. These weren't dramatic qualities. They were subtle, human details that most actors would overlook in favor of more cinematic behavior. McQueen absorbed them quietly and methodically, incorporating what he observed into his own interpretation of the character over the course of pre-production. The influence is visible throughout the finished film. Frank Bullitt doesn't behave like a Hollywood cop, he behaves like a working detective who happens to be on camera. The understated confidence, the physical economy, the refusal to perform authority rather than simply embody it, all of that traces back to Toschi's real-world presence. By grounding the character in genuine observation rather than genre convention, McQueen gave the role an authenticity that audiences recognized instinctively, even if they couldn't identify its source. Number 19. The role almost went elsewhere. Casting the female lead opposite McQueen was not a straightforward process, and the role nearly went in a very different direction before it was settled. Several actresses were considered before Jacqueline Bisset was cast as Kathy, Bullitt's girlfriend. The part required someone who could hold the screen alongside McQueen's dominant presence without competing for attention, a balance that was considerably harder to achieve than it might appear on paper. One of the names discussed during early casting was reportedly a more established star whose involvement would have shifted the film's emotional dynamics significantly. A bigger name in the role would have demanded more screen time, more dialogue, and a more conventional romantic subplot. That approach would have pushed the film closer to traditional thriller territory, where the love interest serves as a narrative counterweight to the action, rather than existing quietly and naturally within it. Bisset's casting changed the texture of the relationship entirely. Her presence was understated and naturalistic, mirroring the restraint that defined the rest of the film. Kathy didn't exist to explain Bullitt or soften him. She existed as a separate person navigating her own discomfort with his dangerous world. That subtlety gave the film an emotional dimension that felt honest rather than manufactured, and it's a quality that would have been nearly impossible to achieve with a more conventional or higher-profile casting choice. Number 20. Silence made it explode. What makes the famous chase so overwhelming isn't just the speed or the sound, it's everything that comes before it. For much of the film's runtime, the tone is deliberately quiet. Dialogue is sparse and functional. There are no dramatic monologues, no expository arguments, no forced emotional peaks. The camera observes rather than insists, and McQueen's performance favors stillness over spectacle throughout. The restraint is so consistent that audiences gradually settle into its rhythm without realizing what's being carefully set up beneath the surface. That sustained calm is what gives the chase its devastating impact. When the pursuit finally erupts, it doesn't just break the silence, it shatters it completely. The sudden shift from quiet procedural to full-throttle chaos hits with a force that wouldn't be possible if the film had been loud and aggressive from the beginning. Every restrained minute that preceded the chase functions as compressed tension, released all at once when the engines ignite and the tires begin to scream. The filmmakers understood a principle that many action-driven productions ignore. Spectacle is only as powerful as the contrast surrounding it. A film that operates at maximum intensity from the first frame has nowhere left to escalate. By holding back for so long, the movie turned its quietest quality into its greatest weapon. The silence didn't weaken the experience, it made the explosion feel earned, and that powerful sense of earned release is what separates this chase from the hundreds of imitations that followed it over the decades. Number 21. The chase had an architect. Every second of the pursuit that appears spontaneous on screen was actually the product of meticulous planning by one man. Kerry Lofton, the stunt coordinator responsible for designing and executing the chase, brought decades of experience to the production. He had worked on some of Hollywood's most demanding action sequences before this film, and his understanding of how to orchestrate vehicular chaos while maintaining crew safety was unmatched in the industry at that time. Lofton's process began long before any cars were started. He mapped out every maneuver, every intersection, every camera position in advance, treating the chase like a complex choreographed performance rather than a series of improvised thrills. Each pass through the streets was planned with precise attention to speed, angles, and escape routes in case something went wrong during a take. The appearance of reckless spontaneity was, in reality, the product of exhaustive preparation, careful rehearsal, and years of accumulated instinct. What makes his contribution so significant is that audiences never sense the architecture beneath the action. The chase feels dangerous and unscripted precisely because Lofton understood how to hide the structure supporting it. He knew that visible choreography kills tension. The moment a viewer senses a planned sequence, the illusion of danger evaporates completely. His ability to create controlled chaos that felt genuinely uncontrolled is the invisible craft that holds the entire sequence together, and it remains one of the finest examples of stunt coordination in the history of cinema. Number 22. The role he nearly refused. Playing a corrupt politician in a film dominated by car chases and quiet machismo didn't initially appeal to Robert Vaughn. When he was first offered the role of Walter Chalmers, the ambitious and manipulative senator, Vaughn saw it as a thinly written part that existed mainly to give Bullitt someone to push against. On paper, the character lacked the depth and complexity that Vaughn typically sought in his roles, and he seriously considered turning it down before hearing the full pitch. What changed his mind was a recognition that the role's power lay precisely in its restraint. Chalmers didn't need monologues or dramatic confrontations to function within the film's structure. He needed to project cold, institutional authority, the kind of threat that operates through phone calls and implied consequences rather than raised voices. Vaughn eventually realized that playing the part with icy control could make Chalmers feel more dangerous than any physically imposing or conventionally written antagonist would have been. The gamble paid off in ways neither Vaughn nor the filmmakers may have fully anticipated at the time. His performance became the perfect counterbalance to McQueen's quiet intensity, two men operating at low volume but maximum pressure. Chalmers represents everything Bullitt resists: political calculation, public image, and the willingness to sacrifice individuals for institutional convenience. Vaughn made all of that register through demeanor alone, and the role became one of the film's most essential elements, despite having far less screen time than its lead. Number 23. McQueen didn't drive at all. One of the most persistent myths surrounding the film is that McQueen performed every driving shot himself. It's an appealing story, the actor who loved racing doing all his own stunts, and McQueen himself did little to discourage the legend during his lifetime. The truth is considerably more nuanced than the mythology suggests. While he did drive in several key shots and was genuinely skilled behind the wheel, multiple professional drivers handled the most dangerous and technically demanding portions of the chase throughout production. Bud Ekins, McQueen's longtime friend and stunt double, was among those who took the wheel for specific sequences. Ekins had already performed the famous motorcycle jump in The Great Escape on McQueen's behalf, and their working relationship was built on years of mutual trust and professional discretion. Other stunt drivers contributed as well, each handling shots that required a level of precision or risk that went beyond what the production could responsibly ask of its leading actor during a grueling shoot. Careful viewers can occasionally spot the transitions, a slightly different hand position on the wheel, a change in how the driver's shoulders sit against the seat, or a fleeting glimpse of a profile that doesn't quite match McQueen's silhouette. These subtle clues reveal the collaborative nature of the driving, but acknowledging this doesn't diminish McQueen's involvement. He drove enough of the chase to make his presence authentic, and he trusted his team enough to let them handle the rest. The legend works not because one man did everything, but because the seams between performers were made nearly invisible. Number 24. The film became protected. Decades after its initial release, the movie received an honor that placed it alongside America's most culturally important works of art. In 2007, the Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry, recognizing it as a work that was culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant to the nation's heritage. The designation ensured that the film would be permanently maintained and protected for future generations to study, experience, and appreciate. That recognition reflected a dramatic shift in how the movie was perceived over time. Upon its original release, critical reception was mixed. Many reviewers praised the chase sequence, but questioned whether the film surrounding it had enough narrative substance to stand on its own. The plot was considered thin by some, and McQueen's deliberately minimal performance divided opinion between those who saw it as a bold artistic statement and those who found it emotionally vacant or underdeveloped. The decades that followed steadily reversed those early reservations. As audiences and critics revisited the film, its restraint began to look less like limitation and more like a deliberate artistic choice that was simply ahead of its time. The minimalism that once frustrated some viewers became the very quality that distinguished it from its peers and kept it feeling contemporary across changing eras. The Library of Congress honor confirmed what a growing consensus had already recognized. This was not merely an effective thriller with a great chase, but a landmark in American filmmaking whose influence extended far beyond its genre. Number 25. It changed how action looked. Before this film reached theaters, Hollywood action sequences operated under a very different set of assumptions about what audiences would accept. Chases were typically staged on closed sets or backlots, shot with techniques designed to exaggerate speed, and edited to create excitement through artificial means. Realism was not the priority, spectacle was. Audiences accepted this without question, because they had never been shown an alternative that treated action as something grounded in physical reality rather than cinematic illusion. The chase changed those expectations permanently. Its use of real locations, real speed, and real danger established a new standard that filmmakers across the industry could no longer ignore. Directors like William Friedkin drew direct inspiration from it when crafting The Pursuit in The French Connection just a few years later. The influence continued to ripple through the decades, from The Driver to Ronin to The Bourne Identity, each one carrying visible traces of the approach that was first validated on the steep hills of San Francisco. What makes the film's legacy so enduring is that it didn't just change what action looked like, it changed what action was allowed to feel like. Before this movie, audiences watched chases from a comfortable distance, disconnected from any sense of real consequence. Afterward, they expected to feel the weight of the vehicles, the texture of the road, and the physical consequences of genuine speed. That shift from observation to immersion reshaped an entire genre permanently. And every filmmaker who has attempted to capture real-world intensity in an action sequence since 1968 is working in the long shadow of what this production accomplished. What Bullitt achieved wasn't the result of luck or a single brilliant idea. It was the product of creative battles, calculated risks, and a refusal to settle for anything artificial. From a chase that nearly never existed to cameras mounted inches from the pavement. From corporate car deals that accidentally created an iconic rivalry to a leading man who studied a real detective to find his character, every layer of this film was fought for. That's why repeat viewings keep revealing new details. The restraint that defines the movie isn't emptiness, it's compression. Every quiet moment stores energy that the chase eventually releases. And understanding what went into making this film doesn't diminish the experience, it deepens it. If this video changed how you see Bullitt, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the films you thought you already knew. Drop a comment and tell us which secret surprised you the most.